Our last speaker from the panel this evening is Ruth Serwotka from Women's Place UK. Ruth.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been quite a week. Every week is quite a week, it has to be said, in the land of gender identity. But this week has been quite a week and a half, actually. I mean, the first thing we have to say is well done to you all. It's been quite a week getting this meeting, actually a meeting in this room, and the fact that we were barred from meeting at the Friends Meeting House. So I think everybody should give the organisers a clap and say well done for for ensuring this meeting is taking place, and for everyone's bravery of actually coming into the meeting room and saying that women's rights matter and our freedom of speech matters and our right to free assembly matters. Women matter. But it has been quite a week, some of it like every other week. We've talked about the online organisation and the culture of intolerance. So this week, like every other week, I've been told by John, Jim, Phil, Tom, whoever, to shut up. I've been sent an effigy of a woman being lynched on Twitter saying, "Kill TERFs." And obviously, not quite like every week, but my husband has been sent a letter told he shouldn't be consorting with known TERFs. So that was a first, and quite hilarious. But there are other signs that things are beginning to change. So this last week and a half, we had a letter which was pulled together by Women in Women's Place UK, that was signed by Len McCluskey, which is the biggest trade union in this country. And we also had a protest at Pride where lesbians said that the LGBT movement were not defending the rights of lesbians. And I think that when we have actually pulled together an alliance, the unlikely progressive alliance of Len McCluskey with a group of lesbians, that we are making some progress. So, well done. So, all jokes aside, one of the things that we need to consider is why we are here, what's happening in women's lives that has put us at this point. Because the environment, as we've all discussed around this debate, is absolutely toxic. The misogyny is incredible, that people who are supposed to be on the progressive left think that they can talk about women in the way that they do. And, the fact that on virtually every indicator of society, women are not making progress. We are moving backwards. And that is the culture around this debate. So it's really important, I think, as other speakers have also mentioned, that we have to point out that if you're from a poor community and you're female, you are now more likely to die at a younger age than your mother. That is what statistics tell us. Life expectancy is moving backward for women in the poorest communities. We have no equal representation. So at the same time as the Labour Party has decided that it will open up all women's shortlists to anybody who identifies as a woman, otherwise known as men, that they will ensure that there are less women in Parliament or political representation. So at that point, obviously, 100 years after the suffragettes, we still do not have equal political representation, and we do not have any mainstream political party that is actually standing up and saying that that is an issue. The women who founded Women's Place, as Philippa said earlier, are mainly from trade union backgrounds and from the women's sector as well. But From the trade unionism's point of view, we do not have equal pay. 50 years after the Equal Pay Act, and women, born women, natal females, can expect to earn significantly less than men. From the 1st of October, you are going to work for nothing because your male counterparts will be earning that much more than you in a year. So again, our rights have not been advanced in any way that has been meaningful. And as always, which is something that we must never forget in the sort of, furore surrounding this debate, is that every week, more than 2 women are murdered in this country. And that is something that obviously is horrific, and the reason why we still need services that are women-only, female-centred, and protect the rights of women and girls. So the Home Office, on the one hand, seems to acknowledge this as something that is important to them. They have posted a statement saying that violence against women and girls are very serious crimes. They have a huge impact on our economy, our health services, and our criminal justice system. Protecting women and girls from violence and supporting victims and survivors remains a priority for the Home Office and this government. So, well, great, that's good, but then on the one hand, you make a statement, but on the other, you take away. So we have to think about what it is that the government are saying in terms of their proposals around women's only spaces, given that they claim to be protecting women and girls. We've had a lot of statements in the last few weeks, again, which is all about the shifting narrative that's taking place, about how we've all been very silly and got our knickers in a twist, about what is really being proposed around the Gender Recognition Act and the changes to the potential changes to the Equality Act. We are obsessives, we don't know when to shut up. All they ever wanted was a little administrative tidying up. So I think it is really important, and again, in taking, thinking about the measuring how much progress we have actually made, some of the things that have been submitted to the government in terms of the proposals that have come from some LGBT organisations in order to remove single-sex spaces. So in January 2016, the Women's Committee, first of all, in August 2015, Stonewall submitted evidence to the Women and Equalities Committees that said that they requested the removal of single-sex spaces from equality law. That is a disgrace. How shameful is that? And they did that without ever discussing that proposal with women. In January 2016, the Women's Committee recommended that the Equality Act should be amended so that occupational requirements and/or single-sex separate services should be removed from legislation. This is what we have been facing, and this is what we have managed to put back to a certain extent. We obviously have to remain vigilant and ensure that we respond to the consultation. In July 2016, the government says that we agree and we will seek a policy that will remove single-sex separate spaces from provision. In July 2017, Stonewall commits to advocate for the removal of Equality Act provisions allowing sex-based discrimination. So June 2018 statement that we come out with this week, which is that we all didn't mean any of that, and we really did not ever intend to have single-sex spaces removed, is basically a repositioning and complete hogwash. And if anything happens as a result of this period of women becoming more active, it is that Stonewall should be held to account for how it has missed the rights of women. And so very quickly, these are the things that Women's Place say. It's very minimal because there are lots of issues within feminism that need wider discussion. We need a broader movement. But Women's Place was set up to focus on some very minimal things. And that is that we must uphold the right for women to have women's spaces in law, and that the exemptions have to remain in place.
Absolutely.
And the list for the reasons for that is actually endless, but I think that when we begin to get into what sorts of spaces we're talking about, then women out there in general society, in the public, in the community, will understand what's at stake with these issues. Firstly, obviously, there's rape crisis, there's rape counselling services, there's domestic violence services. All of that we want to protect. We also, though, want to protect something which is meant to be a fundamental policy of the Labour parties, which it will stand on the next general election, which is that there should be single-sex wards where women are free in hospital services to live and to sleep and have single-sex spaces, including shower facilities and so on. We think that there should be female-only prisons, and that the female prison estate should not have to manage transgender women who are identifying and may not have had surgery or are in any way transitioned other than through self-identity. We think protecting female prisoners who are very vulnerable is a really important thing that we should continue to uphold as a civilised society. We think that healthcare and the right to have a female attendant or a female doctor for certain sex-specific related illnesses, such as mammograms or cervical smears, is something that all women should have the right to request. We think that elderly care should also protect the dignity and the privacy of older women. We think that every high street changing room should have single-sex changing facilities. We think that Topshop, where our teenage daughters go and try on clothes and fashion, should not be open to the male gaze of anyone who says that they are transgender. We think that gender-neutral toilets in places like schools, for instance, where young girls have begun menstruating at a younger and younger age, as we know from society, that those facilities are just not fit for purpose. And that we know that women fought for sex-segregated facilities so that they could participate on an equal basis with men in the workplace, within schools and within any academic institutions. And of course we know, as Helen said at the beginning, that there is an issue about women in sports. Women should not have to compete. Girls should not have to compete with someone who is male-bodied. That just is putting the rights of someone's feelings, what they assert that they are, above the rights and the feelings of women and girls. And that is not somewhere where we're going to go. So the very final point is that this is quite tough. We've had a tough few weeks. It seems to get harder, but actually there is, I think, progress that's being made, and that what we need to do is stand up against the shibboleths, the orthodoxy, all of the things, the trans women are women mantra that goes on, and say that actually, as women and girls, we want a fully informed discussion, and in a democratic society, we have that right to meet, to discuss, and to put our opinions forward.